Good afternoon, champions. I made a synthesizer, by which I mean I lobotomized somebody else's synthesizer, then I made an album with it, and now I'm going to release the modified synthesizer back into the Reaktor User Library, so you can download it and use it for free. Free as long as you already have Reaktor, which costs money. I feel the need to tell you how this synthesizer works in this little video. But there's a big problem, which is that even though I worked out how to control this circuit, after 10 years, I still don't really know how it works. But first, what does this synth sound like? Pretty good, huh? So what's the story? What you are looking at is software called Reaktor 6. It's for making musical-ish instruments, and currently it's running inside another piece of software called Ableton, kind of like the toy in a chocolate egg. 10 years ago, a user called lazyfish uploaded an instrument called the TG-1S brackets lazyfish to the Reaktor 6 user library. Who is lazyfish? I could find out, but I decided I don't want to know. If you know, please don't tell me. Don't leave a comment. Because I want to maintain the fantasy in my head that lazyfish is actually a fish. That would be pretty special, a synthesizer made by a fish. This fish, I believe, also made Screwell, I don't know how you say it. It's a synthesizer. Screwell is a synthesizer. It's a synthesizer that comes with Reaktor. Same thing, it's a noise synthesizer, but it doesn't have the parlable tonegen. Back to the TG-1S, or in fact a mod for it called TG-1S Live. This instrument has 8 tone generators, and I found one of them, called Parlable, very compelling. What's so good about it? 2 things. Basically, turning the knobs is very expressive and fun. And the scope has a very nice link between the visual and the sound, one of the best I've ever seen. But I also found the TG-1S very difficult to control. The problem is that any knob you change also changes the overall rhythm, and this makes it almost impossible to sync to other instruments. Because this is Reaktor, you can open this baby right up and get in its guts. I've spent 10 years trying to work out what's going on here and get more control out of this thing. So, to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of TG-1S, I give you this, the TG-1S. It's called 1. Well, that's fun. It's called 1 because it only has one of the tone gens from the original, Parlable, and S because it adds features that let you synchronize that tone generator to the timing from your host program. Basically means you can synchronize it to a beat. If by chance somebody got this far in the video and is thinking, but wait, what's the big deal with noise music and noise synths? Why? I don't get it. For that person who probably doesn't exist, here's a hoity-toity aesthetic opinion, and you may disagree, but what I like about noise synthesis generally is the meaninglessness. By comparison, have you ever sat in the opera house in the middle of a production that you didn't understand and you didn't get, but you look around at all the people watching and you think, well, they must know something I don't. There must be some special appreciation of the way they're singing, or they already know the story or something like that. They've got some special knowledge or hook into the thing, or they're just here to be seen. I hate that feeling when you look around and you don't get it. What I like about noise is that there's nothing to get. It just is what it is. It's just some squiggles and some beeps and bloops. And if you find them compelling, you do. Here's another hoity-toity opinion. We're living now in this world where AI is able to do more and more things that we thought only humans could do, which is a huge technical achievement. But what it shows is that us humans are actually simpler machines than we thought. We thought only we could do that. But it turns out to train a machine to do the kind of noise that humans like isn't such a big deal. Anyway, this has nothing to do with AI. That's a rant. Let's do an ad for the album. You know that feeling like cowboys riding off into the sunset on horses and the sky is on fire and it makes you pine for the wilderness and escaping the responsibilities of your life. You know that feeling. Because if you don't, you're not Dronecore enough. 12 golden Dronecore greats will take you back to that nostalgic place where you fantasize about your responsibilities being mutated into the responsibilities of somebody who rides a horse and manages cows for a living. Available now. So, how does it work? Like I said, I still don't completely know, but I'll tell you what I do know. Let's start back at the original TG-8H live mod for the original TG-8H. This synthesizer has 8 voices, and parameters for those are set through 4 channels of control. Once we are in the parlable tonegen, they have different labels. In the parlable tonegen, they're called Macros 4 is the first channel, Macros 5, substand, and primary. I'll explain more about those later. There's also these 2 knobs, Let Oro and Gooch. They do fun stuff. Over here is buttons that randomize a lot of things. Down here is the master volume, and here is a reverb unit. Plus, the TG-8H live mod added 2 controls, which is an XY that you get by dragging up and down across the pad here, which changes it. It's lots of fun. Okay, if we go inside and have a look, and the 8 tonegens are in here, and this second one is parlable. The core parts are a parabolic oscillator that feeds into a bandpass filter that feeds into this thing called inf norm. Inf norm divides the signal by itself by its own peak detection somehow. Then they loop through what appears to be, it comes out of inf norm back over here. This cross voice module, you've got 2 wavetables, but actually they have the same internal reference. So I think they're the same thing. They point to the same memory. I think back out here, the wavetable outputs control 2 crossfaders that control the frequency and amplitude of the parabolic oscillator. They increase the value from 0, which is the control signal, towards input 1, which has nothing connected to it. On top of that, these input signals that come in are actually between a range of -0 and 1. So I'm not sure what happens when they go into the negative. On the output side, we have a pan, and then left and right. Pan is also controlled by just adding these frequency and amplitude signals together. And then this output up here is for the scope. So the scope isn't a normal scope of left and right, it's a scope of frequency versus amplitude. Let's now go to the TG-1S to look at how this is all controlled, because it exposes more of this in live data that we can see. Oh, I love that startup. So first thing is I demystified some of the channel names. Because like nonsense names are fun and cool, kind of Reaktor synth tradition, but for me it's better to know what you're doing. Except of course for let, oro, and gooch, because what's the point of living if you can't turn up the gooch sometimes? I know some people won't be a fan of what I've done here, but of course this is Reaktor, so you can just press edit and you can type in whatever nonsense name you like. Okay, back to the TG-1S. Arranged here are the 8 voices, and everything's kind of more vertical here. So that's voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, etc. Let's go through what each channel does to these voices. So this frequency read position, if I start bringing these up, you'll see these little lines are moving here. This is the frequency table, and by read position, what was previously known as Marcus, I can't even remember, Marcus is moving where this frequency read value is. And then I think it's saying, okay, for channel 1, I want that crossfader to be controlled by the channel that it's reading from, by you moving that read position. The amp read position is very similar, and you'll see it happening on the second table. One thing that's important to note is when these are at the bottom, they're at 0, kind of sort of arbitrary values there. Some of the other values multiply them. So if they're at 0, this means they'll basically never change, which is useful for the synchronizing things we're going to do in a minute. Channel 3 is frequency modulation of that parabolic oscillator. And if I turn this up, you'll see the parabolic oscillator output, which is down here, going faster and faster. In the TG-1S, you'll see there is 2 parabolic oscillators all the way inside here. In the tonegen, there's actually 2 parabolic oscillators. That's because I needed to change one to the sync version, but above a certain frequency, it doesn't behave the same as the old one. So that's why there's 2, so you still get the correct high frequency behavior. Okay, channel 4 is the band pass value. Note it goes from negative values here to positive values. If we go all the way inside the tonegen here and we look at the documentation of the band pass, it says it's expecting a range about 20 to 120 positive. So I'm not even sure what supplying negative values is doing here. Something glitchy and fun, I guess. Very roughly speaking, the band pass affects the pitch you actually hear the oscillator generating. Very roughly though, that relationship isn't always true, particularly at the higher FM freaks. Okay, let's look at the modifiers. In the TG-1S, because we can see the values, it's really easy to see what these do. Okay, X and Y, which we put onto knobs, they were on the, you kind of drag them on the scope in the TG-8H Live, but they're on knobs in the TG-1S. You could see them changing basically everything, but because it's a multiplier, values that are left at 0, which is kind of like channel 1 listening to itself, aren't modified. Let oro boosts all the FM frequencies quite a lot. So in real life, that makes it go, let's have a listen. Oh yeah, love that. The gooch shifts just FM and amplitude position. And normally you get it to about 3/4 and you suddenly get a sort of funky, different rhythm happening on your thing. Okay, so what does the TG-1S add? First, let's be clear what it takes away. You lost all the other tonegens. You only have parlable. What it adds is 2 functions. First and simplest at the bottom is there's an amplitude per voice. That's useful for starting and ending so that you can slowly build things up or take them away. The second and most important is that it adds this sync function per channel. What this does, you'll see the FM frequency is changing up here. What this does is syncs to bar as supplied by your host, bar and beat. So 2-1 means that it'll sync every 2 bars. And if sync length, this applies globally to all, is times 1, then the FM frequency is also locked to a 2-bar frequency. So let's go to where we should hear this and play it. You just watch that light, it should go bang. And now that's keeping that in sync. I can change other knobs, other things, and it stays in sync. Now, not every configuration of things here makes something that's suitable to sync. I know that's pretty vague. You're going to have to experiment with it a bit. If you look in the mongrel category, not all, but most of these sync convincingly to the beat. I've also kept in the other presets, even though some of these refer to tonegens that no longer exist, they pretty much all still do pretty good results, I think. There's 2 more controls to know about here with the synchronization. There's a manual sync button and there's a manual sync mode. You can use that if you want to map it to your host program so that you could sync to rhythms that I haven't put here in the range. The sync phase will change where in the oscillator phase it tries to sync to. Generally 1 or -1 or close to those give the best results, I've found. So let's start from scratch and make a patch that syncs to the beat. I've zeroed all the channels out. The first channel is set to sync on every second bar, and the amplitude is up on all channels. So, and you'll see, because it's set to sync to the bar, it's already set the FM frequency for that timing. The bandpass frequency, so let's set this is kind of the pitch at the moment anyway. And these low values in the like above 20-ish are like nice and bassy, but it's, you know, it's not that high to make it high. Anyway, yeah, I like the bassy for our first channel. Let's click around and set some of the other channels to do some things. Yeah, why not? But we won't hear them do much because the FM frequency is so low. So again, let's put some FM into those. Now this is fun, such a fun sound, but you'll notice that it's basically doing this on-off thing. And if you look at this first oscillator, we're highly synced to that. When it's above the line, we're in a kind of low state, and when it's below the line, we're in our kind of high state. Now that's great because that's synced, but it's not that interesting. To make it interesting, we need to move these frequency and amplitude read positions. Let's move not all of them, but a few of them off 0, listening to this first channel's timing. And now, yeah, we get some more interesting things. Yeah, it's building up real nice. Okay, I like that already. Okay, and if we start playing with some of the other knobs, highly recommend mapping these to MIDI controllers. It's a lot of fun. It still stays synced, which is great. Really fun. Let Aura will do something quite intense as we turn it up. And Gooch. Who doesn't love a bit of Gooch? Okay. Then we want to save it. If you don't use Reaktor much, when you open it, you might get a red thing here. Click that and make sure that's saved somewhere. Your ensemble is saved somewhere. You're in edit mode. You want to go to the preset browser and then you can make your own folder if you want up here, new bank. And then you want to hit add or store to override something, and you can make your presets and then you'll save things. However, be aware that it's not, let me stop that bit. Be aware that it's not completely deterministic. Sometimes, particularly because there's this, you'll notice when you change presets, there's actually a smoothing on some of the values. So it's not deterministic. Sometimes you need to kind of go through another preset to get to the exact same setup that produces the same sound. So there's still some chaos in here to keep it fun. So how do you get this thing? First, you're going to need Reaktor. I think Reaktor is pretty good value. It's from Native Instruments. You have to buy it. You have to fork out money. You have to give them money out of your wallet into their wallet. But then you get this synthesizer in return, and you can make your own synthesizers. It comes with a factory library of some good sounds. From the user library, there's now 6,000 things in here, different sounds and synthesizers and effects. So I think it's pretty good value. The TG-1S will be in this user library shortly if you search for it, or I'll put a link in the video. That's how we do it on the internet now. Hyperlinks. There will be a hyperlink. You can click and download this for free. Then you're going to save it. It comes as an ensemble file. Save it into your user library, which is just a folder, and then you can open it in Reaktor. Okay, I want to finish with some last tips for the really hardcore lost souls. If you are playing with this a lot, you'll need this mute button a lot. The synth just always makes sound whether the clock is running or not, because it's a noise synth, and that's just what it needs to do. The mute button doesn't save, unless you can change this behavior though. The mute button doesn't save into presets, and neither does the master level. But generally that's useful because it means, you could change presets in the background of your live performance and keep it muted when it's meant to be muted. Okay, if you use Reaktor and Ableton together, there's something incredibly arcane you should know. I wish I didn't know. I wish I didn't have to know this. It's so kind of stupid, but you should know. So don't just drop Reaktor onto a channel. If you do this, use the instrument rack and then put Reaktor in the instrument rack. Then load your synth. And if you don't use Reaktor much, let's just go through this completely. Load your synth. You want to save, if this disk is red, you want to save this immediately, probably right back in the user library on top of the ensemble that it comes from. That disk turns white, and then that means when you're in edit mode and you save new presets you can also save them in a new bank. Save new presets, that means they should be saved automatically into that. I do like to just hit file save on this just in case to make sure my presets are there. Presets are great because they let you set up, you can only map so many of these channels. It's quite hard to map these 8x4 matrix, so you really usually want to set those up with presets, but there's a sort of weird bug in Ableton or intended behavior. This re-enable automation light will come on if you combine automation if you combine automation of these other parameters with presets, which you almost certainly want to do if you're doing something complicated. There's a way around that. So when you map channels, which you do like this, there they are. Now they're controllable from Ableton. I could map them to MIDI or automation. If I take those directly, then you'll have that bug I described where the re-enable automation light comes on whenever a preset is changed. So the preset essentially overrides automation control from Ableton. What you have to do is create macros, which exist in the instrument rack. Hit map, oops. There's some mapping. Yes, okay, so now X is mapped over here to this macro. For some reason on the macro, you don't have the same problem. So I can get the same effect, X has changed there. You can use that in automation, map it to MIDI controllers, all the stuff you want to do, and you don't have the same bug. It works, plays nicely with the preset recall. The preset recall you can do in a clip if you don't use that in Ableton much. If I create a clip and then go to, where is it? Here. I think I have to go sub. I think sub is the operating one. So yeah, sub 1, program 3, and then, the TG-1S. Let's make that play that. Yeah. So don't worry about bank, worry about sub and program to make it recall the right preset. Okay, so now we reached the border of my knowledge, which is a lie because we reached the border of my knowledge several times already. We're far into the territory of ignorance. All the same, we're at the end of the video. I'm sure you're relieved. I'm totally relieved. Go home, hug your loved ones. I'm gonna do that and weep. There'll be such weeping. 12 Golden Dronecore Greats. That's the album. This is the only promotion I'm gonna do for it, a random tutorial video for the synth. Have fun.